Hi, I'm Callista Whitman, and I found out my sister was getting married through a cousin's Instagram story. There she was, Vienna, in a soft focus boomerang, holding up a perfectly manicured hand with a rock that sparkled like it had a trust fund of its own. Her eyes were wide, her smile tight. Around her, people cheered. Champagne popped. The caption said, "She said yes. Cochrane engagement party Saltesser V&D forever." I stared at the screen, unblinking. It wasn't the ring. It wasn't even the fiancé. Daniel Cochrane, a well-tailored ghost of a man with a last name more valuable than his personality. It was that this was the first time I was hearing about it. No call, no text, no email. Not even a heads up from Mom, who still forwarded me chain letters about 7 prayers for financial blessings. I sat there, my phone hot in my hand, feeling like the air had been sucked from the room. Not because of heartbreak, but because I just realized something monumental. They had erased me. It would be dramatic to say I raised Vienna alone, but it wouldn't be inaccurate. We were half-sisters, technically. Same dad, different moms. I was the accident from a college fling. She was the miracle baby that made my dad get his act together. For a while, anyway. When Vienna came into the picture, I was already 10. By the time I was 17, our parents were in debt, checked out, and more interested in MLM supplements than actual parenting. So I stepped in. Someone had to. Vienna was fragile in a way I never allowed myself to be. She cried over Tess, worried about her skin, needed someone to tell her she wasn't the worst person alive every time she forgot a deadline. And I did. I carried her. Through high school, college applications, heartbreaks with boys who didn't deserve her, and through 3 years of private college tuition. She always promised she'd pay me back. She meant it, I think. Until someone richer came along. 3 hours after seeing the post, I texted Rachel, our cousin and Vienna's maid of honor, apparently. Me. "Did Vienna send invites out for the party already?" Rachel. Yeah. Didn't you get one? Thought you'd be helping Planet TBH. Helping Planet. That was rich. I typed, erased. Typed again. Me. Guess it got lost in the mail. Rachel. Weird. Anyway, it's this Saturday at the Cochrane's estate. Crazy house. You'll die. I wouldn't die. But something in me did shut off like a light. I called my mom that night. "Hey, Mom, got a sec?" She sounded distracted. "Sure, honey, what's up?" "I saw Vienna got engaged." A pause. Then that overly sweet voice she used when she was about to lie. "Oh yes, isn't it wonderful? Daniel is just lovely. So respectful, comes from a good family." So why didn't I hear it from her? Another pause. Longer this time. "Well," she sighed. "Vienna wanted to keep things simple. You know how weddings are. It's all very delicate, and she's under a lot of pressure to fit in with Daniel's world." Meaning I don't fit? She didn't say anything, which said everything. I hung up without another word. That night, I went through my finances. I'd paid Vienna's last semester up front. Tuition, rent, even her car insurance. The next invoice was due in 2 weeks. $18,400. She hadn't mentioned it, but she had remembered to invite influencers and Daniel's Pilates-loving cousins to the engagement party. I opened the invoice, clicked Withdraw Support. Then I renamed the bank folder. Energy I'm taking back. The next morning, I got a voicemail from my dad. His tone was laced with the guilt of someone who wanted to sound calm, but knew he'd failed me. "Hey, sweetheart, I heard you're upset about Vienna's party. Let's not make this a thing, okay? She's under a lot of stress, and we're all trying to keep the peace." Peace. That's what they called cutting me out. They wanted peace, but they were about to get consequences. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet retribution, measured in dollars, and detachment. You see, for a long time, I thought being a good sister meant being a lifeline. Turns out, it made me the easiest one to discard. So I stopped being easy. The irony? The night of her party, While they toasted under string lights and told stories about her brilliant future, Vienna's phone lit up with a notice from her college. Student account balance overdue. Enrollment status. On hold. She wouldn't find out who pulled the plug until the morning. And by then, I'd already started rebuilding my life. Without them. The first real consequence didn't arrive with a bang. It came with an email. Student account alert. Your enrollment is currently on hold due to an outstanding balance. Please contact the Office of Student Finance immediately. I knew exactly when Vienna would read it. It was Monday morning, 9:17 a.m. She always had her 20 Y's oat milk latte from that overpriced cafe, 3 blocks from campus. Always sat by the window with her AirPods in, pretending to study while waiting for her fiancé's good morning text. She opened her student portal in the middle of that latte. I knew because the email I'd requested, an automatic notification from the school, pinged in my inbox at 9:23 a.m. 7 minutes of confusion. Then chaos. By 10:12, my phone was buzzing. Her name on the screen. I didn't answer. At 10:15, another call. 10:17, a third. Then a text. Vienna. Are you serious? Did you cancel my tuition? I watched the bubble blink, disappear, then return again. Vienna. I can't register for spring. My advisor just told me my file's frozen. Callista, what did you do? She wasn't panicking yet. She was still in the bargaining stage. This must be a mistake phase. The she wouldn't actually do this to me phase. I let the silence stretch. By noon, she was on my voicemail, and her tone had changed. Callista, this isn't funny. Daniel's mom just asked me about my course schedule. I told her I was finishing early because of advanced credits. This is going to make me look like a liar. That made me laugh. Not loudly. Just that bitter, sharp little exhale you give when irony slaps you in the face. Look like a liar? Sweetheart, you are one. You built a fantasy version of yourself on the back of my sacrifices, and then locked me out of the dream. At 2:30 p.m., she showed up at my office. I saw her before she saw me, through the frosted glass wall, pacing in reception, twisting the Cartier bracelet Daniel had given her. I waited a moment before stepping out. Callista! Her voice cracked, genuine. She looked like a girl who'd just realized the ground under her wasn't real. You're not answering my calls, she said softer. You weren't sending invitations. She flinched. I'm sorry about that, truly. But why would you do this? Why now? You know I'm about to graduate. No, you were about to graduate, I corrected. But then you decided I wasn't worth having at your party. You decided a table of people you barely know meant more than the person who kept your life from falling apart for 4 years. I panicked, she said, voice sharp. Daniel's family is different. They ask questions. They don't understand things like our situation. Our situation? I raised an eyebrow. Okay, my situation, she admitted, folding her arms. I didn't want them knowing I was supported. It doesn't look good. I'm trying to build something. And you thought building it meant cutting off the foundation. Don't make this about pride, Callista. This isn't pride, I said. It's clarity. She didn't cry. Vienna never did in front of people, but her eyes glistened. Resentment, regret, panic, all fighting for control. What do you want? She asked finally. The room went quiet, and in that silence, I knew the balance had shifted. She wasn't asking what I needed. She was asking how much damage I was willing to do, and that was the most honest thing she'd said in years. I didn't answer. I stepped aside and motioned toward the door. Callista, please, I'm sorry, just fix this, and I'll fix things too. I let her walk out, because this wasn't about one party, one payment, one betrayal. This was about the years I spent being useful instead of loved. That evening, I received another call, this time from Daniel's mother, of all people. Ms. Whitman? Her voice was cool, crisp, like a snowflake that could slice. I'm calling on behalf of my son. Vienna's situation has raised some questions. I leaned back in my chair. She's told us she was self-funded, but we've since learned her education is externally supported. Not anymore, I said simply. There was a pause. Well, she said, almost sighing, that's unfortunate. Yes, I replied. It usually is when lies unravel. Click. The next morning, Vienna's engagement post was taken down, and the silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was delicious, because some storms don't come with thunder. They come with receipts. It didn't take long for Vienna's life to start unraveling. Not because she missed classes or because of the unpaid tuition. That was manageable. But because the story she had told about herself couldn't survive without me holding it up. Daniel's mother didn't confront her directly. That wasn't her style. Instead, she quietly began to uninvite Vienna from family events. Calls that once came daily slowed to a trickle. Daniel, once so eager to show her off, now sent clipped texts and rescheduled dinner plans. He became busy with work. He always was lately. And Vienna? She spiraled. The first public crack came 2 weeks later, at a charity brunch thrown by the Cochrane Foundation. Vienna wasn't supposed to be speaking, but she insisted. She wanted to clear the air, reclaim control. She stood in front of a sea of tasteful hats and clinking mimosas, cleared her throat, and said, I just want to thank the Cochrane family for accepting me, despite everything. A pause. Tight smiles. I wasn't born into privilege. I worked, I sacrificed, I made my own way. And sometimes people misrepresent that. Whispers floated across the tables like smoke. Her words weren't just vague, they were dangerous. Because if there's one thing high society hates more than scandal, it's the suggestion of deception. Rachel called me afterward. You should have seen her. It was like watching a porcelain doll melt in real time. She tried to spin it? I asked. Oh, she tried, and she failed. Daniel's mom left halfway through her speech. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. This wasn't about revenge for me, not in the cartoon villain sense. It was about accountability, about letting truth sit in the same room as comfort and watch what happened next. But I wasn't done. I started writing. It began as a journal entry, a place to put the weight of everything I hadn't said, about being the older sibling who parented, paid, and then got pushed aside like old furniture. Then it became a post, anonymous, raw, unflinching. I published it on a forum where people share family betrayals. I didn't use names. I didn't have to. The response was instant, thousands of comments. People saw themselves in my story, older sisters, single moms, even sons who were used and discarded. One comment hit me hard. You taught her to walk, and she sprinted away with your kindness. This wasn't your failure. It was her choice. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. And Vienna? The post found its way to her. She called me from a blocked number. You humiliated me. No, I said calmly. You did that yourself. I just stopped covering it up. You ruined my engagement. No, I said again. Your lies did. There was a long silence. Then she tried a different angle. I was scared. You were always the one who had it together. I didn't know how to live up to that. I almost softened. Almost. But then I remembered the years of silent sacrifices, the late-night phone calls, the money I gave without a second thought, because I believed we were in it together. You didn't have to live up to anything, Vienna, I said. You just had to be honest. And she wasn't. Not with me. Not with herself. Not with anyone. A week later, Daniel officially called off the engagement. Not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a press release from the family spokesperson. Due to personal differences in values and vision, Daniel Cochrane and Vienna Whitman have decided to amicably part ways. They wish each other well. Vienna's name disappeared from the foundation's donor list by morning. The message came in through my author email, one I barely checked unless I was invoice-chasing freelance clients. The subject line was simple. We'd love to have you on our show. The sender. The Broken Table, a popular podcast where people aired raw family betrayals, broken bonds, and the quiet courage to rebuild life from the ashes. Apparently, someone on their team had read my anonymous story. I sat there staring at the screen, heart thudding. They didn't want Vienna's version. They wanted mine. The episode was titled, When the Savior is the Scapegoat. I walked into their downtown studio with zero makeup, hair pulled back, wearing the same navy sweater I wore to Vienna's college orientation 4 years ago. Fitting, I thought. That was the day I realized I would always be both her safety net and her excuse. The host, Maya, leaned forward across the table and said, "You're not here for revenge, are you?" I shook my head. "I'm here for relief." We talked for 49 minutes. I told the truth about raising Vienna while our parents chased distractions, about paying her tuition without resentment, about being erased from her story the moment she met someone richer. I didn't cry. But Maya did. "It's one thing to be used," she said. "It's another to be denied even the credit for being useful." That line? That's the one that went viral. The day after the episode dropped, my inbox exploded. Not with hate, not with trolling. With women, older sisters, foster parents, best friends, saying thank you. Even a few quiet men chimed in. "I raised my little brother while mom was in rehab. He told everyone he was self-made. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." The twist? Vienna shared the episode, not to attack, but to apologize. Her caption, "I failed my sister in ways I didn't even see until she stopped saving me. I don't deserve her grace, but I needed her truth." I didn't respond, because that post wasn't for me. It was for her followers, her redemption arc. But still, I paused. Something in her tone wasn't just PR. It was cracked. It was human. 2 days later, she showed up at my door. No makeup. A hoodie I hadn't seen in years. The one I gave her the night she got dumped sophomore year. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't cry. She just said, "I didn't know how much of me was you until I lost you." That landed. Because the thing about betrayal is, it isn't always premeditated. Sometimes it's just selfishness in slow motion. "I can't undo what I did," she added, "but I want to start somewhere." I didn't hug her. I didn't slam the door. I just stepped aside and let her in. Vienna didn't come back to ask for forgiveness. That, at least, I respected. She arrived on a Wednesday. Gray skies, light drizzle, the kind of weather that softened the edges of everything. She stood at my door with no makeup, no performance. Her sweater was oversized and pilled, not designer. Her nails chipped. For the first time in months, she looked real. "I won't stay long," she said. "I just wanted to return something." She handed me a small leather-bound notebook, my handwriting on the cover. It was the notebook I kept during her freshman year, where I tracked her bills, her tuition payments, even her panic attack triggers. I'd written reminders to myself. Check in after chem final. Refill her meds. Don't let her see how tired you are. I had forgotten I even gave it to her. She hadn't. "I didn't read most of it," Vienna said quietly. "I just wanted to know why you kept doing it." I leaned against the doorframe. "You were my sister." "I still am." The words came out fast, like she hadn't tested them in her head first. "I know I can't ask for trust," she said, "but I'm asking for time, to build something that isn't based on what I took from you." Something shifted in her voice. Less apology, more ownership. She glanced at the floor. "I've been working at the bookstore near Elm Street." I raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" "Yeah. I shelve romance and mystery and try not to judge people's choices." She almost smiled. "I'm saving," she added. "I've got a spreadsheet, a budget. I even stopped ordering from DoorDash. That's how serious I am." I nodded, unsure what to say. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "This isn't everything yet," she said, "but it's a start." Inside, a check. The amount matched her second year of tuition, almost to the dollar. "I'll send more, monthly, until it's all there." I looked at her. Really looked. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from nerves, but from effort. She wasn't just showing up. She was rebuilding brick by brick. That night, I sat with the check in my hand. It wasn't about the money, it never had been. But holding it felt like holding a confession, a shift. I didn't deposit it. Instead, I opened a new savings account, not for me, for someone else. Someone who, like Vienna once had, might need a second chance, without judgment or strings. I named the account Forged Sisters Fund. It wasn't a grand gesture, it was the next right thing. 2 days later, Rachel sent me a photo. Vienna at the bookstore, hair tied back, glasses on, shelving Toni Morrison under staff pics. She recommended Sula to a 14-year-old and told her, "This one's going to ruin you in the best way." I laughed. Actually laughed. It was strange, like remembering a song you used to love before someone ruined it for you, and realizing it still hits. Meanwhile, the book deal was moving faster than I expected. The editor loved the raw tone, the way I framed love not as sacrifice, but as structure. "You're not a victim," she said. "You're the blueprint." That stayed with me. I titled the book, Built from Silence. And for the first time, silence felt like power, not absence. Weeks passed. Vienna kept sending checks, no notes, no grand gestures, just consistency. Every envelope felt less like apology and more like intention. And one night, she texted me, just a line. "Would it be okay if I listed you as my emergency contact again?" I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "Yeah, that's fine." No emoji, no heart. But somehow it meant more. The bookstore fund grew faster than I expected. What started as a symbolic account with Vienna's first repayment soon became something larger. After the podcast, small donations poured in from strangers. Many of them women, some men, all with the same message. "Someone like you helped me once. This is for someone else." So I gave it a name, Forged Sisters Foundation. No LLC, no board. Just a landing page, a story, and a mission. Help the unseen helpers. And then came the email. Subject, TEDx Summit Invite. Built from Silence. They wanted me to speak, not just about Vienna, about all of it. The silence, the self-erasure, the quiet labor of women who hold others up and disappear in the process. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't a speaker. I didn't do stages or microphones. But then I remembered every time I bit my tongue so someone else could keep their spotlight. I said yes. The venue was intimate. Red lighting, one mic, a sea of expectant faces. My palms sweated through the opening lines. But then something shifted. I told them about what it meant to be needed, but not seen. Loved, but not honored. Used, but not valued. And when I ended with the line, "I stopped trying to be invited to tables I built," the silence was thick. A few heads bowed, a few fists clenched. Applause erupted, not out of politeness, but resonance. Afterward, people waited. Not to congratulate, but to confess. "I was someone's Callista," one woman whispered. "My daughter did the same to me," said another. The next morning, I found an envelope taped to my apartment door. It wasn't Vienna. It was from my parents. The handwriting, my father's. Neat, measured, unfamiliar, in a way that hurt more than nostalgia. "We saw the talk. Your mother cried. We didn't know it was that deep. We were wrong to stay quiet. We didn't realize we were watching you disappear. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I drove. Back to the house I hadn't visited in 3 years. Same chipped paint. Same overwatered roses. Same smell of lemon-scented pledge and stale apologies. They were both there. Mom in the kitchen, Dad on the porch. When they saw me, they didn't smile. Mom spoke first. "We thought we were doing what parents do, encouraging both daughters to shine." "You encouraged one," I said. "You managed the other." Dad flinched. "You made me her safety net," I continued, "but never once asked how much I could carry." Mom tried to speak. I held up my hand. "I'm not here for apologies. I'm here because I need to hear you say it mattered." They were quiet. Then, my father said something I didn't expect. You were the one we leaned on, because we knew you'd never drop it. And that's love? I asked. No, he said. That was survival, and we let you pay for it. We didn't hug. There were no tears, just a long silence that, for once, was mutual. I left with nothing in my hands, but less weight on my shoulders. A week later, I got a call from Vienna. Are you okay? She asked. I heard you went back. I'm fine, I said. Did they say anything worth hearing? I paused. They said less than they should, but more than I expected. Do you hate me for being their favorite? She asked suddenly. I didn't answer right away. Then, I hated that you never questioned it. The launch of Forge Sisters Foundation wasn't a grand gala. It was a quiet event at the community library downtown, a place with flickering fluorescent lights and folding chairs, where people didn't come to be seen, but to feel safe. That was the point. No champagne, just water bottles and baked goods donated by a retired teacher who once helped a girl escape a violent home. A jar labeled, "Give what you can, take what you need," sat at the front desk. I stood behind a podium that wobbled slightly and introduced the first scholarship recipient, a young woman named Layla, who'd worked 2 jobs while finishing high school because her parents told her art school was a waste of time. Layla cried when we handed her the grant. Not loud tears, just the kind that hang in your throat like permission you've waited too long for. Vienna was in the second row. She didn't speak, didn't post. She just clapped. After the event, we sat on the library steps. She looked different now. Not because of clothes or hair or some fake humility act. She looked like someone learning how to be useful, without being seen. I'm gonna apply to volunteer full-time, she said. I know, I replied. She smiled, just a little. You don't have to trust me yet. I know that too. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't forgetting. It was something else. Familiar. Earned. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from a high school in Detroit. A teacher had played my TEDx clip in class. Half her students raised their hands afterward, saying they had stories like mine. The teacher asked for permission to use my talk in her curriculum on emotional labor and family systems. I said yes. Then I cried. Not because I was sad, but because something I carried alone for years had become something others could stand on. And then, the real surprise came. Rachel reached out again, this time with a message from my mother. She wants to donate, Rachel said, to the foundation. I hesitated. Is it guilt money? No, Rachel replied. It's inheritance money. Grandma left it all to her, but she says you're the only one who earned it. It wasn't vindication, but it was validation. I accepted the donation, with one condition. It had to be in Vienna's name. Rachel was stunned. Why? Because if we're going to change the story, I said, we start by letting the next chapter be better than the last. The foundation grew, small at first. Local fundraisers, modest grants, therapy stipends for caretakers who'd never been asked how they were doing. Then a viral clip. Then a donor from Seattle. Then a feature in a magazine for women in leadership. But none of it felt as good as watching Layla's mother come to her graduation and whisper, I was wrong. That's what legacy is. Not the blood you share, the lives you make better. 1 year later, I returned to that same community library. Another graduation, another student, another speech. And before I walked on stage, Vienna touched my arm. Hey, she said. I turned. I still mess up, she admitted. I still get selfish. But I think about you every time I want to take the easy way out. Good, I said, because that's what legacy should do. Not trap you, but teach you. And then I stepped onto the stage, not as her sister, not as anyone's daughter, but as someone who had finally rewritten the story. Sometimes the families we're born into can't see us clearly until we've completely stepped out of frame. I spent years being the fixer, the rescuer, the background strength, and it took losing everything, including my place in their story, to realize I was never meant to be written out. I was meant to write my own. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've given more than you've received, know this: your story matters. You don't have to stay quiet to be good. You don't have to carry it all alone to be worthy. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved to find yourself again? Or maybe you're still in that quiet middle place, deciding who you want to be from here. Let me know in the comments. What part of this story resonated with you most? Where are you watching from? If this video touched you, leave a comment or tell me why it didn't. I'd love to hear from you either way. And if you want more stories like this, ones that go deep, that tell the messy, beautiful truth, hit subscribe and join this growing community. You belong here.